Chapter 591 in the barn. There was no doubt that these mechanical horses were war veterans. Dominic took note of the bullet damage, arrow nicks, and magic burns on the surfaces. The constructs had once been armored, but the armor had been removed before sale. Or they might have used conventional barding over the mechanical structure. Either way, it left them with horses in various stages of mechanical damage. Functional, but well-worn and battle-tested. Your Grace, perfect timing. We expedited the shipping as a courtesy, and we've got the whole order here already. They are all functional as promised, but I won't say that they're the prettiest. Rill greeted him. I see that. Did the previous owners win, or lose their war? Dominic joked.
Won.
However, these were covered in conventional barding, so the damage to the horse underneath went largely ignored unless it stopped functioning. It's a common tactic in many regions. Just toss some cloth over it and ignore the problem to keep fighting. Even Signia does it with their soldiers. Dominic nodded. Wrap that bandage tight and get back in the fight.
Exactly.
You can do the same if you're using them for show in the arena. They'll do the job well enough for a few dozen more passes, or a season in the fields, without too much risk of breakdown. That's not your plan, though, is it? Dominic shook his head. No, the plan is to give them out to the titled nobles so that we have a mounted cavalry rifleman corps in the duchy. The men of the Natural Sons are the finest soldiers Signia has to offer, and I will feel much better about our security knowing that they're ready at any time. Understandable. I will turn them over to you now, and you can sort them out at your leisure. Just take the reins, and they'll follow. Thanks, Rill. I hear that the airship factory is making good progress on the next order, too. That should help keep the duchy's balance in the positive. The merchant laughed. It certainly would. He had gotten a killer deal on all these decommissioned mechanical horses, since everyone else had rejected the deal, except for common farmers who saw them as a step up from nothing. Even if they broke down, they were parts to sell. The horses were leashed in groups of 20, but Rill had attached extra ropes to them, so Dominic could bring them all back to the manor on his own without needing assistance from the guild or extra trips. The guests would be startled to see the influx of horses, but that was far from the strangest thing that they had seen in recent days. However, that was not true of everyone that he passed on the way to the manor. People were coming out of their houses to stand on the front steps or the balcony and watch the strange procession walking through the city. Nobody knew if it was a sign that the war wasn't really over, or if it was just a bulk order for the duchy. The condition of the horses made them think that it was the former. The signs of bullets hitting steel plating were hard to miss, and scorched metal wasn't something that happened by accident in the field. The procession looked a funeral procession for a mechanical cavalry unit to many of the locals, but Dominic didn't seem concerned, and there were no flags draped over them as there would be for a funeral parade. The trolls working the gate happily took the horses to the side field, where they could assign the farrier to look at them. That wasn't actually her specialty, unless they needed tack or shoes. But convincing the trolls that Jasmine wasn't capable of doing whatever she put her mind to was a lost cause. She had convinced the goats that she was an adult, free to roam the grounds. That alone was an accomplishment in Dave's eyes. She didn't look like one, she was kind of small. However, when Dominic entered the farrier's forge, what he found was not a confused farrier. Or, not just a confused farrier. There was also a rather embarrassed royal guard hurrying to straighten his clothes and put his armor back on. You know, there's a lock on the door. Dominic reminded them. My apologies, my lord. Colonel Wilkes apologized. No need for that. I don't care if it's a passing fancy, a fondness for the smell of burning coal and horses, or something serious. It's your own business. However, there are worse options for who could have walked in on you. Wilkes chuckled as Jasmine helped him fasten his armor. Dave was supposed to warn us if someone was coming. You must have distracted him. I brought back hundreds of mechanical horses, mostly in need of a full refit. We will discuss that later. But I need Jasmine to hire some techno-wizards to do the repairs and refurbishment. Then prepare the war horses among them for the jousting tournament starting in only a few days. There are 3 of them. 2 for the finalists of the tournament and 1 for my wife. Make sure that hers is suitably splendid. Preferably just slightly faster than my own. The couple smiled at each other. He's learning, Jasmine noted.
He is.
Having the very best horse in the stable is a sure way to keep the paladin princess happy. Or, happier than having the second best one would make her. Plus, if her horse is faster, she can come save me when I do dumb stuff. Dominic added. He is becoming self-aware. But enough joking. I have work to do, so we will have to take this up later. Jasmine insisted. She waved them out of the stable, and Dominic led the guard team leader away from the house a short distance. Should I start arranging a wedding? Wilkes shrugged. Maybe not this week. Next week for sure. I just need a few more days to convince her that life as a royal guardsman's wife is for her. Got it. I'll make sure that everything stays set up, just in case you convince her early. Chapter 592, The Incident. Dominic returned to the house with Wilkes and walked into even more chaos than the Royal Guard team leader's makeout session. The furniture was overturned, there was blood on the floor, most of which smelled human, and half the dining room decorations were smashed. What in the world went on while I was out? I only went to place an order for the jousting event. He shouted, bringing Liz, one of the kitchen maids, running. Your Grace, it's horrible. The monarchs are fighting, and I don't know what got into them. I was cleaning dishes when it started, but they were all shouting about betrayal, and then it turned into a brawl. It only stopped when that old witch made them. What do I do? Is there spare decor for dinner? The table is broken, but we're supposed to start serving soon, and I don't know what to do. Wilkes paled and rushed upstairs to check on Alexis. He hadn't seen a notice on her communications token, but admittedly, he hadn't been paying close attention. If he had missed something important, he was going to be in real trouble this time. He wasn't on duty, but not on duty and not responding to messages when there was an emergency were very different situations. He was a royal guard. They were always on call when the princess called. Don't worry, we will get everything cleaned up and the table repaired before it's time to set it for dinner. Dave can fix a table in no time flat. Dominic assured Liz, who breathed a heavy sigh of relief. Thank you. I will get back to my duties. Dominic surveyed the damage to the house and quietly called over one of the veiled maids who was waiting in the corner. Can you explain, or should we go to my office? The woman nodded toward his office, and Dominic knew that this was going to be more than a little bit of a situation. Once the door was locked and the soundproofing circuit was activated, Dominic motioned for the veiled maid to speak. The kings got impatient about the situation in the northeast. It started with them blaming Dagos, but then Dagos turned on them for supporting a civil war in his country and abandoning the mutual assistance treaties they had. It just went downhill from there until everyone blamed everyone for the situation, and then it turned to violence. Most of the damage in the room is from the royal guards charging in to break up the fight once weapons were drawn and magic got involved. Dominic raised his hand to stop her. Wait, back up a second. You're saying that the kings drew weapons on each other and started casting spells over a petty disagreement in the middle of the dining hall?
Yes.
It seemed incredibly odd to me as well. There is something going on here, and it looks like nobody is immune, except possibly that crazy old witch. She wasn't in a frenzy like the others, but even the necromancer king got in on the action. Imagine that, a man of his age throwing punches like it was a barroom brawl. Dominic nodded. Did it affect the staff? Any of the veiled maids or the trolls? She shook her head. No. We were in shock, as you could imagine, but only the royals and their closest advisors seemed to be so passionate about the argument that they were throwing punches. Even their guards seemed—
No, wait.
One of the guards was fighting as well. Just one guard from Axbridge. Dominic sat silently, wondering what could have possibly caused this issue. The fact that it was only the royals fighting made it seem like an obvious trap, as if someone had set a spell on the manor house to trigger them. Causing a massive war between the northeastern nations would be a strange way to get anything accomplished, unless all that they were after was death and economic collapse. But that didn't help anyone here. Not the royals, not the commoners, and certainly not Dominic. Check with anyone who has strong magic. I want to know if there are any magitech devices active here that shouldn't be. Any sign of a curse, a malicious spell, anything. I know that we're missing something. The kings wouldn't draw weapons on each other in public without a much better reason than merely wanting reparations from a coffer that's already dry. They have to know that even if they take Dagos, they're taking a barren and demolished wasteland. There's nothing there for them. The maid nodded, and then Dominic continued. Where was Alexis during all of this? The princess was in her study, likely still is. I know that her second brother went to her after the incident, but the king and the sixth prince returned to their own quarters. Dominic nodded. All right. Now, I just need to figure out what I am supposed to do here. It's not like I can just go to a bunch of kings and demand answers. They'll come to me for them, with a heavy dose of blame. But I don't have any answers for them yet, and they're not going to just accept that it was their own volatile tempers that set such a commotion off. You can try talking to the guards from the other nations, or perhaps Advisor Tryon. Tell them that it's part of the investigation, but don't accuse anyone of anything or ask too probing of a question. I might not know much about royalty, but I once worked in a rather unsavory establishment that catered to wealthy nobles. They get angry if they think that you might be blaming their friends. I would suggest checking if they have any injuries, but you can't heal. Would you like the team to help with that? We've all got paladin-class trade skill cores, even if our healing is still very low level. Dominic shook his head. Don't have the veiled maids give themselves away that easily. Just offer to send up healers and ask if there is anything else that they need. Not just their king, but the royal guards as well. If they're in a better mood, they might spill a little bit to the staff. I know how we all love to gossip.
Got it.
What will you do next? I'm going to get a witch, and then find Advisor Tryon. Between the two of them, we might be able to find something. Chapter 593. Tryon knows. Advisor Tryon was thinking exactly the same thing that Dominic was, and she found him in the main room before he could even go out to the witch's coven house. Just the man I needed to see. We need to speak privately. Dominic nodded. Indeed we do. This is not natural, and I can't find the cause. I was going to go get our local witch coven leader to help. Advisor Tryon shook her head. That won't be necessary. I think that I know the cause, and we just need to work out how we're going to fix it. Dominic led her back into the basement, and then stopped when he noticed something wrong. That picture is looking at me. Tryon stood behind him and waved, then moved him back and forth. You're right, it is looking at you. She agreed. Well, that seems anticlimactic. We found the issue.
Tryon laughed.
Oh, young dragon, you have much to learn. That painting is just a painting. I'm reasonably certain that the reason the eyes are tracking you is because the house is haunted. It wasn't an issue before. Before, you didn't have a whole group of monarchs who were peripherally related to the King of Dagos staying on the premises. Dominic sighed. Wait, you're saying that the reason they're all trying to kill each other is because they're all related to the old king. Some are 2 or 3 generations removed, but their lineage includes a princess from Dagos within the old Dragon King's lifetime. I think that it is a lingering part of the curse, in a way. What about the guard from Axbridge? I was informed that he was also going into a frenzy along with the kings. Tryon shrugged. I haven't looked into it. He might be related somehow. Or he could just be an asshole. Some people don't need much reason to start throwing hands. That last part was said with a meaningful look at him. Point taken.
All right. Now, what do we do about it?
Relocating the kings seems like a logical measure, but if we're going to make Westover a trade hub, we can't just exclude every royal. Tryon didn't answer right away, as she was examining the painting, which was still tracking Dominic through the room. I think the issue was that someone got hostile, and that triggered the remnants of the spell. Something like a lingering alert that the Dagos invasion might have restarted. However, I think that there is a solution for it. I can make tokens of passage. We usually use them to lock certain areas of the palace, either for security or because someone left active zombies in them. If you give one of them to every royal you have invited, the revenant should realize that they're friends. Then, we just need to wait until the last of the curse fades. And how long will that take? Dominic asked. I don't know. Not more than about 50 years. We could try to excise the angry spirits from the manor, but that seems unlikely. If someone started trying, they would likely just get killed. Why does this sound like a problem that won't ever really end? Tryon laughed. Because it won't. I'm not a young woman, and I know a thing or two about blood curses. They don't end, they just go inactive. There is a good chance that until the day that the magic is completely gone from Westover, you will continue to have random flare-ups. Even the nobles who got married here risked setting the spell off. I know some of them have royal lineage, even if it was generations ago. The difference was that they were intending to either get married and leave, or get married and help rebuild Westover. Neither of those things would be likely to set off the curse. However, a group of kings, each with their own agendas, arguing about trade policy and the recovery plans for Kynwyn province? That is something that just might have done it. Oh, look. The painting went back to normal. That's a good sign. Now, how long will it take you to make those tokens? We can't have the nations going to war with each other over nothing. Westover has enough issues without a regicide inside the manor.
Tryon laughed.
Live a little. Don't you want to take back your family's ancestral territories? Dominic rolled his eyes. As great as that ambition sounds, look at the state everything is in after the last war for the territory. Even before Kynwyn flooded, half the country was destroyed. Even if I had the manpower to push for an independent nation, would we even have anyone left to live in it by the time that we finished? The old woman frowned. If that's how you look at it, I still think that you might do well to gather the monster-blooded and push for Wavemates to be its own nation again. The Necromancer King would stand beside you, simply because you are your father's son. She turned toward the image of the Dragon King and his consort with a young child. The others might be in denial, but there is always someone who remembers, and the truth always comes out. Hell, half the new arrivals have been calling you Prince Dominic, anyhow. You can pretend that it's because you're married to a princess, but we all know better. Every troll and most of the monster-blooded sorcerers know on first sight that you have the blood of the Dragon King running through your veins. He might not be the father who raised you, but he was certainly the one that sired you. Dominic nodded. You're right. Just look at the painting. Even if he wasn't my father, we're nearly clones of each other. There is no way that it's anything but a close family resemblance. I don't think that we should make a big fuss about it, though. Let the ones with magic come to me, and I will build Westover into a haven for all of us who are run out of our homes. Chapter 594. Offset the Curse. Tryon smiled at Dominic. So, you do have ambitions for Westover. You just don't want to go your own way and take back Wavemates as a nation. Well, at least not yet. Give it another 100 or 200 years of human stupidity, and you might change your mind. It's the curse of living too long. Everyone gets old on you, the old generation passes on, and you're left behind with a bunch of wet-behind-the-ears idiots who don't know their ass from a tea kettle. That's how I ended up in Shersdonia. Oh, I thought that you were from there, given that you've been the king's advisor for so long. Tryon shook her head. No, I was born in Kynwyn. My whole family were techno-witches going back 30 generations. Purebloods, as such families used to be called. I suppose they might still be, but they scattered in later years. Too much concentrated magic caused envy, and envy brings danger. After a series of assassinations of wealthy mage family members 100 years ago, most of them split up and moved all but a core branch of the family out of the country. Dominic smiled. You know, when I was traveling, I met many who claimed to be from pureblood families. None of them were telling the truth, as far as I could tell.
Tryon laughed.
A bit challenging to pretend when you've got a monster species in your lineage, especially in the face of a dragonkin who can tell the difference. If you ever get to the west coast, there is a kingdom of Stantia named after the same family that Stantia province is. They've got pure-blooded mages in their royal family, but they've also got elves in their nobility. An odd bunch, if I do say so myself. Dominic gave her a disbelieving look, and the old techno-witch laughed. She might be a bit crazy, but she was still self-aware enough to realize that her insanity was no secret. Now, where were we? Right, making protective tokens so that the royals stopped trying to kill each other. Tryon took out an assortment of broken items that looked like they would be right at home in Dominic's big pile of spare parts. But she wasn't salvaging them for parts. She was combining them into oddly shaped statues and using magic to connect broken magical circuits that were never intended to entwine. After half an hour, she had a whole stack of them and a proud smile on her face. These will work wonderfully. Even if the duchy doesn't forgive them, this will help them keep their minds clear. I think that it should be enough, though. The spell only acted up when they were already fighting with each other. Dominic sighed in relief. Wonderful. Now, we just need to pass them out without offending anyone. That's the easy part. Just go hand them out and tell them that the house is haunted. Nobody's going to question that. Tryon laughed at the mental image of the kings being told that the whole incident was being blamed on a ghost. They would hate to admit it, but there was no way that they could prove otherwise, and it was a perfect excuse for any sort of behavior since they arrived. I get the feeling that you want nothing to do with this part, Dominic noted. Indeed. I will give one to the Necromancer King, but I suspect that he was not actually affected and just wanted an excuse to throw hands. Tryon agreed. I can actually see him doing it. He's got far too little to keep him entertained, and he needs something to keep his days from blending into each other. As I understand it, he's lived far longer than anyone else I've ever met. Indeed. Even I have no idea how old he actually is. The history books note when he took control of Shersdonia, but they don't go into his early life, and he was already an ageless necromancer then. There is so much that I don't know about the past. Not even my own past. But I suppose that is inevitable. With what I know now, it seems clear that my identity was hidden, likely with the intention of telling me all about it when I was grown and able to look out for myself. Only, that never happened, and now it's just scattered clues for us to go through to get the real answers. Tryon smiled. Well, we've at least found some of the important answers. That painting was unexpected. I recognized you because I knew the Dragon King. But with the painting of him and the consort with a child, an event that shouldn't have ever happened, according to the history books, the truth seems pretty obvious. I was thinking that the trolls were the giveaway. Dominic joked. There is that too. I wonder what will happen if the giants start coming back to Westover. The ogres are brutes, too dumb to be friendly. But the giants are more intelligent than most of the humans. I doubt that will happen, though. They left the continent entirely, and not even I have heard anything about them for centuries. Well, that is unfortunate. We could have used some more oversized security guards. Tryon rolled her eyes. Magitech and trolls should be more than enough. The fact that you made them so close to fireproof is already horrifying to most of the royals, even if they won't admit it. Now, stop delaying. You need to give these to the kings before they decide that the problem is fixed, and come down for dinner. Right, it was nearly dinner time. Dominic took the strange Magitech statues and headed back upstairs, leaving Tryon admiring the possibly haunted paintings in the hidden basement room. The first stop would be the Signian royal retreat. It just wouldn't be right to start with anyone but his own nation's royals. However, when he reached the door, the royal guards blocked his way. Your Grace, the king has requested no guests. Dominic nodded. I have protective Magitech devices that will offset the wayward magical effects that everyone noticed earlier today. Are any of the royals available? If so, I will pass it to one of them directly. If not, I will pass theirs to Princess Alexis. She likely won't be stopped on the way in. The guard nodded. She is permitted to enter. However, she is not here now. Prince Alex is coming down to speak to you. Chapter 595. A Solution. Sure enough, Prince Alex arrived only seconds later, looking frazzled and sporting multiple protective Magitech items hung from his outfit. Highness, I have protective statues for you. I believe that we have isolated the cause of the effect. Dominic began. Come in. Explain everything. Dominic followed him into the building and up to the top floor, where the royals had gathered, surrounded by soldiers and protective spells cast by Prince Alex. I think you might have overestimated the threat, Dominic noted as he saw the situation. Easy for you to say. You weren't in the room when everyone went berserk. We came within minutes of losing one of the regional kings. Do you have any idea of the absolute chaos that would cause? Now, I hope that you have a very good explanation for what is going on here, or an identified culprit. Because the king is not going to accept some vague explanation and a statue. Prince Alex informed him, then sighed. I suspect that it was something that was already here. We searched the entire manor compound and most of the city, but didn't find anything when we arrived. I didn't feel any new magic of a hostile sort being used, and not much gets by me. He added. You are right. It wasn't new magic, it was the lingering curse left on the lands of Westover after the invasion. You see, every one of the royal families has intermarried. Dominic began. Prince Alex's eyes went wide, and he waved his hand around in frustration, pointing at everything and nothing. And because everything is cursed to reject the Dago's nobles, when the king started to argue, the land rejected them as your guests and tried to drive them away or make them kill each other. Exactly. I'm glad you got it right away. The curse isn't actually gone, it's just going inactive now that things have changed. I believe that most of it is gone from Dagos now, but that remains to be verified. However, it won't fade from Westover so easily. Too much happened here, and I suspect that the same is true of Kainwen. Even if they try to rebuild the city, nothing good will come of it, and the construction teams will be met with endless disasters. Dominic agreed. So, what's with the statues? Advisor Tryon made them to help offset the effects of the curse. She's also a native of Wavemates, and techno-witchery has a rather odd effect on traditional magic. I can't verify without another incident, but in theory, these should stop the bearer from being targeted by the cursed spirits of Wavemates. So, that's why she wasn't affected? Dominic shook his head. She doesn't have royal blood. She's from a mage family. Or a witch family. I didn't ask for clarification. But she's considered to be a local by the curse, not an invader. Between you and me, I suspect that the Necromancer King just wanted an excuse to punch someone in the face and wasn't actually robbed of his wits. From the other side of the wall, Dominic heard someone chuckle, and the King of Signia walked out. I suspect the same. He does not have any Dagos-born heritage that we could find in his family history. At least his public family history. That old man loves to be mysterious. However, this does pose a serious issue for us. We can easily send someone without royal blood to do the negotiations for us if we're worried about a recurrence. However, Prince Fahad and Prince Axel have been here for some time, and it wasn't an issue. It may only be that we had intentions to claim territory that the curse acted up. You see, I would like to get Kainwen Province for our rebuilding support funding, and the King of Axbridge would like the same. You were not present for the start, but that was what triggered the incident. The not-so-subtle suggestions that Dagos give up territory in exchange for funding to rebuild didn't cause any reaction. But the moment that Kainwen Province became the topic of discussion, things started to get heated, until it ended up like that. The king explained. Dominic hadn't expected him to go into so much detail. At least not with him. If he was, it meant that the information was relevant to Dominic, or at least the king's plan for Dominic. Now that everyone was about to learn that the land was still cursed, it would likely change the negotiating tactics. So, attempting to split up Kainwen Province didn't end well? I'm not sure how much of it is even going to be salvageable after the flooding. The city is supposedly completely flooded, and the population has fled. Most of them are in Axbridge as it was closest and upriver away from the flooding. That's likely going to make it difficult to get the king to give up on the territory. Dominic agreed. And his issue isn't just with Dagos. He also sees Stantia Province recruiting refugees and nomads from the rural areas of Axbridge as a poaching effort, stealing talented individuals for Signia. Prince Alex added, You're not wrong. I am trying to steal as many talented individuals as I can. Not just from Axbridge, but they do have a rather large population of nomadic mages. The second prince smiled. Just don't say that in front of their king. I'm certain that Prince Fahad has already made the point more than once, but as long as we keep denying that it's intentional, there isn't much that he can do without escalating the situation. And we already saw how that ended. What do you need for me to do? I'm certain that there is some plan for how to move forward from where we're at. Dominic asked, getting directly to the point. The king smiled. Indeed. I have a plan to stabilize the province and prevent the mass migration of magical residents. It's really quite simple. The old territories of the Dragon King are cursed. There is no denying that at this point. So, we will work around the issue. If Stantia Province objects to being ruled by outsiders, then we will give it back. When it is safe for us to meet again, I will suggest that as a gift to my daughter, she will be given an honorary role, governess of Stantia Province, which will make you, Prince Dominic Wavemates, Duke of Wistover and hidden child of the late Dragon King, the governor of Stantia Province. Let's see how the curse on the territory reacts to having all noble oversight passing through your authority. Chapter 596, Stability Plan. There was something definitely wrong with the king's logic. Dominic was certain of it. And not just because he didn't want all the extra paperwork. So, you're openly recognizing me as the son of the Dragon King and naming me Stantia Province, and you think that will reduce the problem with refugees? Dominic asked carefully. The king shook his head. Not at all. We all saw the family portrait on the basement wall. It's an open secret that you are the true Wavemates prince, and you will be recorded that way in the royal register. However, for the sake of the public peace, that will not be publicly acknowledged.
What I am
saying is that with my dear Alexis as the governess, you will be governor of Stantia Province. Every noble in the region will answer to the two of you. In effect, it will be an extension of the duchy, without the right to financial consideration from the landholders outside the official duchy. Now it made more sense. If he got the whole province, he would get to tax the whole province and then pass along the king's share. That would make Duke Wistover too powerful. But the governorship was a symbolic and military position. He would be responsible for keeping the peace, but wouldn't get to tax the nobles to pay for it unless intervention was needed. That would make Wistover the default gathering point for all noble events in the province, a provincial capital in all but name. I suspect that this role will come with some additional resources? Dominic asked carefully. Indeed. From the able-bodied men of the province, a regiment will be raised. 10,000 men at arms to keep security in Stantia until such time as the crown deems the region to be stable. 10,000 soldiers, taken from the 3 major cities, Dominic assumed. Though they might have officers appointed from other parts of Signia so that they didn't end up with a regiment personally loyal to Dominic instead of the crown. As you wish, Your Majesty. I will do my best to see that the peace is kept in the province. If you have recommendations for experienced advisors, I am open to them. I suspect that the princess has much more experience in such matters than I do, and I will look into recruiting some of the royal paladins for the role, if they are available. Prince Alex patted Dominic on the shoulder. You don't see any issues with using royal paladins as advisors and generals for the governorate? I don't see any major downsides. They have incredibly thorough knowledge of military tactics, political norms, and experience interacting with senior nobility. Out of everyone that I could choose, only the children of senior nobles or the royal family would be better suited. Prince Alex looked confused for a second, as if couldn't quite comprehend what Dominic thought the force was for. Then he realized that Dominic didn't see them as symbolic, but as a form of mobile law enforcement. That was a valid use for the governor's forces, but normally, they would be kept in the city unless there was an uprising. It was the job of the other nobles to control bandits and crime in their territory. The governor only had to maintain general order among the nobility, according to his official duties. Prince Alex shrugged at the king, who smiled at Dominic. All right, I believe that I have a recommendation for you as an advisor on the station of governor. They're a bit older, but with age comes wisdom, I am told. They will be dispatched along with the regiment, once it is assembled. Now, if you have other duties, you may see to them before we make the official announcement in the central courtyard in 2 hours' time. That was a very short notice appointment, and likely designed to put the other kings off balance in whatever negotiations came next, which would make it imperative that Dominic got them all the protective statues before the announcement was made. The closest was the Axbridge house, so Dominic went directly to the door guard with the protective statues in his hand. I have protective devices for the royals. If they're busy, just escort me to one of them, and I will pass it over. Dominic explained. I will summon the crown prince. That seemed to be protocol, Dominic noticed. Never straight to a flunky or to the king's advisor, but to the prince. Fahad came down with a smile. Dominic, I hear that you have good stuff for me. Did that crazy woman come up with a solution? Dominic nodded. Indeed. Though it's not a cure. Should we speak inside? Prince Fahad brought him into the main room on the first floor, and Dominic handed over a pair of the statues. These should keep the curse from taking effect. It isn't gone, just dormant most of the time. When the royals got eager to divvy up territory, the curse took them as being invaders. It's not like the curse is properly sentient. It just senses intention, you see? But these statues should help remind it that you're my guests, friends, and allies. With that assurance, the curse shouldn't activate again, but in the future, there is still the chance that it might trigger. I don't know what the solution will be yet, but the King of Signia intends to make an announcement in a few hours. I suspect that you will want to be there for it. Prince Fahad nodded. Thank you. I will pass the spare along to my king. Do you have more for the others? One for every royal who reacted during the meeting. Dominic confirmed. Then you had best get them distributed before your king is ready to make his speech. Any time there is a public declaration in front of the other monarchs, it's always a provocation. That's how it's always been. They love nothing more than to show off in front of their rivals. Chapter 597. The King's Announcement. It wasn't long before Dominic had all the protective statues delivered, and everyone was beginning to gather in the central courtyard to hear what the King of Signia had to say. The fact that he had made it a public announcement was enough to get everyone's interest. But that he had made it a public announcement when all the other kings were present was even more telling. Everyone, welcome. Thank you all for coming today. I know that many of you are not here for politics or a royal announcement, but for the chance to find your life partners at the debutante event. But that only makes it more important that you hear today's news. By royal decree, as of today, the Duke and Duchess of Westover will be given the title and role of governor and governess of Stantia province. Upon their capable shoulders, we place the duty of maintaining order within the province and settling the disputes between our loyal subjects and enforcing the royal will. The king paused as everyone present gasped in shock. That was a huge promotion for the Duke, a position that would normally have gone to either the crown prince or one of the other royal heirs who was close to the succession. Princess Alexis was far down the list of heirs, the 9th child. However, it didn't need to be said that this wasn't actually about promoting the princess in a bid for royal power. It was about placing the Dragonkin Duke into a role where the residents of Stantia province who were still loyal to the Wavemates family wouldn't rise up against the Signian nobility. In one simple declaration, he had ensured that the only way the province would be a threat in the future was if the Duke turned rebel against the crown. That seemed unlikely to happen, given the circumstances, but it would also help ensure that the Duke stayed loyal and didn't push for further powers and lands. So much of Stantia province was still uninhabited that the other kings were certain that Signia was planning to assign more lands to the younger sons of their most loyal nobles. The duchy only had barons under them, but it was still mostly empty and there were no affiliated counties under it, only the baronies. That lack of middle nobility made the other royals nervous. Speculation was uncertainty, and uncertainty meant a power vacuum. Until the land was assigned to someone, none of them would be able to rest well. But they also needed to sort out what was going on with the Kynwyn province situation. They couldn't just let the entire population move to Stantia. A 1 million-person relocation would be a logistical nightmare, and it would leave the land in Kynwyn province nearly worthless. Nobody wanted to claim the ruins of a lost civilization. They wanted the massive capital city with all its techno-magic and ancient culture. And that was what had caused the whole issue earlier that day. For a moment, nobody knew what to say. The king had just dropped a bombshell on them without any sort of prior warning. Certainly, there were no other dukes in Stantia province, but each of the 3 major cities had an earl from an established family and dozens of other nobles under them. The old Dagos nobility had been entirely replaced after the war, but not with new appointees as Dominic was. They had all come from known loyal families. But now, the Dragonkin Duke had been appointed as the governor of the province, overseeing them all. Unfortunately for them, the king didn't appear inclined to take questions. He had made his announcement, and now he was conferring with the 2 princes about how many advisors and staff they needed to bring to Westover to handle the administrative portion of the duties, as well as the advisors that Dominic would need to adjust to the position. Dominic suspected that the names they were throwing about were actually a calculated misdirection intended to make the other kings nervous. They all seemed to be generals and other war heroes from the last war with Dagos, as well as a few retired sorts who had fought and made their name in previous conflicts. None of the ones that they were mentioning now were the sort of nobles that were well known for brown-nosing or being pushovers. In most situations, that would be taken as a sign of weakness on the part of the noble that they were supporting. However, Dominic was the butcher of Westover. He didn't need someone with a stern will to prop up his reputation. If anything, he could likely use a skilled statesman to help him deal with the other nobles who were going to have their feathers ruffled by his appointment as governor. They had the lineage and history to be considered for the position, but this announcement felt so sudden that they may not have been considered at all. Then, Prince Alex brought up a name that nobody had expected. "Why don't you leave my sixth brother here until the matter is settled?" He is fully trained in negotiation, he knows all the nobles of Stantia province, and he doesn't have a defined set of duties in the capital. Prince Russell would be an excellent option as head advisor to the governorship,
she offered.
The sixth prince looked startled. Clearly, she hadn't mentioned this in advance. While it was true that his duties often took him far from the capital, it wasn't like he didn't have work to do. If he stayed here as advisor to the governorship, who was going to take on his gopher duties, running errands all over the nation for the king? The younger princes were far from ready, and the only other royal who didn't have an assigned task as Princess Eleanor, who was still a few years too young and likely to end up married outside the kingdom. There simply wasn't anyone who was perfectly suited to his current task. Surely, they wouldn't leave him to be bullied by his little sister? Chapter 598. Who to Advise. Princess Alexis' proposal seemed to intrigue the king. But that intrigue was not exclusive to him. Many others had ideas about who would be an excellent advisor on foreign policy and international relations for the new governor and governess. Perhaps a few emissaries on full-time assignment to Westover might not be a terrible idea. It would help keep lines of communication open, as we share such a large border with Stantia province. Prince Fahad suggested. That's not an awful idea. Midfield also shares a border with Stantia province and with the edge of Westover Duchy itself. Prince George agreed. It is also the central airship hub for the Merchants Guild. It couldn't hurt to have at least one or two people here. The advisor to the King of Kyria added. I just want to get away from the salt air for a bit, so I'll volunteer myself, the advisor from Chip joked. He wouldn't actually get to stay long. He had duties back home, dealing with the aftermath of the storm. Hiding here, thousands of kilometers to the southwest, was not an option. All right, enough jokes. Obviously, we will all leave an emissary here in Westover. I believe it has earned that right as a budding metropolis. There is no need to let our advisors run wild and put their own names forward, the Necromancer King insisted before Tryon could recommend herself. He was well aware of her past, and was not about to allow her to use a flimsy excuse to lay about Westover Manor all day feeling nostalgic and skipping out on her actual duties. Advisor Tryon's peculiar personality was no mystery to her king. Out of all the gathered royals, none could claim to understand the insanity that was a techno-witch's mind quite as well as he could. Prince Alex raised his hand to calm the chatter in the crowd and began to speak. As you all might have guessed, that means there will be a few changes around Westover in the near future. Obviously, there will be a security force arriving. That isn't essential for the governor to do his work. However, we will also be commissioning a public portal array to link Westover with the 3 cities of Stantia province. The location is not yet confirmed, but it is likely to be near the center of town. Furthermore, additional infrastructure teams will be deployed to complete a roadwork project, linking Westover to the main highway running between Coster and Limpsbury. The exact route is yet to be determined, but we intend to have it finished within the year, and will be conferring with the Merchants Guild regarding the matter, as they are currently the largest traffic group moving between the locations. That was huge news for everyone here. The portal array would reduce the mana cost for mages to move back and forth between cities, but it would also allow those with a lower-level portal spell to move further than normal. That wasn't just a boon for Westover, it was a huge infrastructure bonus for the entire region. Everywhere in Stantia province would benefit from it, as Westover was becoming a magitech manufacturing hub, but even as far as Castle City and Darden would be able to open portals to Westover with minimal effort. That change marked a monumental shift in public policy. Portal arrays existed in every major city, but they were usually in a mage tower or a secure room within the Lord's Manor and directly linked to another safe location, not a public area. Building an open public portal system was a level of consideration and access for the common people that would have been unthinkable to most of the other regions present. You simply didn't do that. In fact, if you did it, you risked having them bribe a mage apprentice to send them to another region at the first sign of drought or an additional tax levy. It didn't take much for people with little to lose to consider moving. If they thought that there was somewhere they could start over that would be better than where they were, it would be a dangerous precedent to set. The Necromancer King saw it as a flex by the King of Signia, a statement to the others that his people were doing so well that his nobles weren't concerned about them not coming home if they traveled. And more than that, it said that the commoners were wealthy enough that they could travel. That wasn't common for the typically impoverished sharecroppers of most rural regions. If you had enough money to travel by portal, you had enough connections to ask the local lord or mage sect to open one for you. Dominic saw it the other way around. The public portal would make it so much easier for every other noble to try to poach his skilled workers. If they could be hired off to do a job, with the promise that they could easily return home by portal, it would be an entirely different matter than asking them to take a week-long trip by merchant caravan through monster-infested wilderness. While Dominic tried to read into the hidden meanings behind the king's decision, the king was already acting. He had instructed Prince Alex to open a portal, and they were ushering a group of retirees through. Obviously, those were the advisors that the king had chosen. None of them were fighting-age men, and none of them smelled like magic strongly enough to be the mage intended to gather their military force. Most likely, Prince Alex would do that himself. Or he would ask the Duskblade sect for their assistance. A strangely familiar face came through the portal, and General Merlot stepped out of the crowd to hug an elderly man with tattoos running from his fingers up under his sleeves and all up his neck. "Dad, meet Duke Dominic Wavemates," the aging general insisted. The old man smiled at Dominic. "Well, look at you. Looking just like your father, no hiding that. I'm told that you need to know how to keep the nobles in line without using dragon fire. Well, you're in luck. I've trained 3 generations of titled brats now. They won't get anything past me. Oh, George, you're here too. You should come drink with me. We can go look for some lovely ladies, like the old days." Prince George of Mitfield laughed. "Old man, you're thinking of my father. And don't let mother know that you took him out to a brothel." General Merlot's father smiled. That wouldn't end well for either of us. Right properly scary that woman is. This day was definitely about to get more fun, Dominic decided. Chapter 599. Advisors on site. Old General Merlot, I assume? It's a pleasure to meet you. Dominic greeted the elderly noble. "Just call me Jack, Your Grace." "No, just Jack." "Yeah." General Merlot sighed. "Dad, are you drunk?" "Well, I didn't know that I was going to be going anywhere until an hour ago now, did I? I was plenty drunk before that." Dominic laughed. "It's the best way to meet anyhow. It helps take the stuffiness out of the event. But who else do we have with us? I don't believe I had a chance to meet any of you esteemed gentlemen during my brief stay within the capital city's palace. I am Alistair, Mage Lord of the Capital Academy. I have been asked to help with the portal array and advising on matters of magical development, as Magitech Theory is my specialty course. Beside me is Jenna, former chief accountant of the Academy, whose talents are self-explanatory. On my right is Lord Blackwell, formerly Baron Blackwell, who has passed the title to his son. City planning and infrastructure are his specialty, and he will be leading a full team from Westover for the foreseeable future." Jenna and Blackwell both nodded politely, and then stepped aside as more people came through the portal. The mages of the infrastructure team are here," Lord Blackwell declared with a smile. But nobody even pretended to be fooled. Sure, they were mages, and they might help with infrastructure, but one look at their faces, and the scars on their arms told anyone with half a brain that these were career soldiers of fortune, not construction workers. Dominic nodded. "I will arrange somewhere for everyone to stay. Does anyone know how many more civilian workers we will have coming today? The army is kit to spend a night in a warehouse, but I will try to find apartments for the others. None that need additional accommodation. We can house our emissaries with the ones who are already on location. The provided housing for representatives is more than sufficient." The Necromancer King decided. The rest of the nations were only bringing a few more people over, ones who would be here long-term. They also weren't in a hurry to get them here, as they already had people on site who could do the job in the short term. The bigger issue was that they would eventually have to return to their thrones, and they hadn't settled the issues with territory and reparations yet. They were reconsidering asking for parts of the old Wavemates territory, but they were not happy about the storm's damage. The curse activation had made them think that it might be better to just leave the whole issue alone and not try to take any part of Dago's. But they still wanted reparations of some sort. Perhaps a nice trade deal. That was something that they could argue about without anyone trying to kill each other, and the increased trade would help Dago's rebuild so that they could afford to repay the debts that the other nations felt they owed. Other than the Necromancer King. His nation hadn't been hit, and he was mostly here just for entertainment and the chance at a trade agreement with a side of entertainment. Advisors, if you would like to join me for tea, we can speak in my office. Dominic suggested, subtly looking to excuse himself from the spotlight. Of course, Your Grace. Highness, Your Majesties, by your leave. Alistair replied. Of course. Go get settled in. I am counting on you to guide the duchy in a productive and prosperous direction. At least the king didn't try to pretend that they were going to be loyal to Dominic. It might end up that way, but for right now, they were very clearly handpicked by the king for their affiliation to him, or perhaps to crown Prince Claudius. The king wasn't young anymore, and while he would live many more years, so would Dominic, and it would make sense for the crown prince to start taking up increasingly large portions of the administrative duties. Either way, Dominic knew that they would be reporting anything that was out of the ordinary to the royals, and there was going to be a lot for them to report. Like Dave. The trolls waved to all the new arrivals as they entered the manor, while the advisors simply stared at them in confusion. Oh, we likely haven't mentioned yet, there are 50 mountain trolls on the manor security force. They guard me, the walls, and do general security around the compound, as well as heavy lifting and some nature magic assistance for the gardeners. He explained. I see. Well, Westover is making a name for itself as a magical destination, so I suppose that it only makes sense that you would have magic-resistant and highly capable manor guards. Lord Blackwell decided. That is true, but we also have many important guests staying within the manor. If trouble comes up between groups of royal guards, I needed someone who could handle it without escalating the situation. The advisor looked confused for a second, then saw the massive shield slung across the troll's back. If he used that as a barricade, he could block a hallway with relative ease, or separate two arguing parties with a wall of steel. That should get the point across, without Dave having to resort to violence at all. Who is taking care of manor accounting at the moment? Advisor Jenna asked, her blue eyes stern under steel gray hair pulled into a tight bun. That would be Castellan Julio. He is taking on the majority of our financial report making and reporting daily to myself and the Duchess. Jenna nodded. I will bring in a small team to ensure that the entire duchy's accounts are in order, including your barons. All of them are new to their position, and while they are exempted from another year's tax levies, it simply would not do if any of them were unprepared to pay after that. Do you have population reports? Dominic laughed. Oh, that's the fun part. We've taken in tens of thousands of refugees in the last week, with many, many more coming our way. We have reports, but they need to be updated daily. Chapter 600. Briefing. Unfortunately for him, Julio was waiting by the office when Dominic's group arrived, primed and ready to put him to work. Oh, I know you. Accountant Julio from the Castle City branch of the Merchant Guild, correct? Jenna asked the moment that she saw him. Now Castellan Julio of Westover Manor. Lady Jenna. It's a pleasure to see you again. What brings you so far from home? The old woman's smile made the Castellan back up a step. Oh, His Majesty invited me here to advise on the financial matters of the duchy. I am looking forward to working very closely with you, starting today. Now, be a dear and have some tea brought, would you? There are reports to read. Julio gave Dominic a pleading look, but Dominic just nodded at Dave, who rumbled a message to get one of the maids in the kitchen to bring them tea. Is that stone conduction? What is he saying? Alistair asked curiously when he felt the vibration through his feet. Asked Dave to have tea brought up. There is a guard at the kitchen door, so he can ask the staff to bring up a fresh pot. That is almost a life hack. Nobody else can understand when they do that, but they can spread the message all through the house. Lord Blackwell realized. Not just the house, all the way out to the trolls on patrol on the walls. Both the house and the perimeter are connected to the same bedrock foundation. The tea came up with a veiled maid a few seconds later, and the four advisors frowned in unison as they saw them. Was this your idea, or Princess Alexis' idea? Jenna asked. As the lady of the household, the staff answers directly to the Duchess. And are they decorative? Lord Blackwell asked. Certainly. She will happily stand and wait for us to request more tea. That's a form of decoration, I suppose. The old man smiled. So, they are combat trained, as the old veiled maids were? I don't know the process, but they are being trained to the standards for a royal paladin. Not all have completed the training, but the veils make life easier on them. It reminds the men that they are off limits, and lets them take breaks without causing a commotion. Lord Blackwell nodded in satisfaction. That answered the questions that he had wanted to ask. These were proper veiled maids, a hidden combat force within the manor, disguised by the trappings of common servitude, and hidden behind the massive form of the mountain trolls so that nobody ever thought to take a second look at them. If there were two present where other guards were not, they would be noticed. But the trolls were so large that even a few of them in strategic locations made them omnipresent and impossible to miss. All right, let's start with the basics. Do you have a map of where all the titled nobles have moved and the rough population estimate for each holding? Jack Merlot asked, still slurring slightly but in full business mode. Yes, right here. We have numbers for all the refugees that we sent, but it is unknown if any ended up in the wrong spot or misrepresented their family numbers. It should be very close, though. The old man looked over the map and took out a notepad that he began to scribble shorthand on. That's not bad. It looks like someone put effort into spreading them out in usable numbers. I see that you also made notes of tradesmen that went to each baron.
Good thinking that.
Most of the high nobles don't think of it, and then wonder why the barons always complain when it comes time to pay the bills. I don't see nearly enough woodcutters, though. Dominic shook his head. Nearly every house in the duchy has a Magitech fireplace, either a legacy item or sold by our duchy-owned factory at a discount to locals. That cut out 90% of the need for wood, as they can heat and cook without it. Smoking still needs it, and you can't do much building without fresh lumber or construction magic. The trades with stars next to them are sorcerers or demi-humans, by the way. Ones who have magic to help with their trade. Alistair smiled. You have Magitech factories? Do you have blueprints for what they are making? That was his area of expertise at the academy, after all. Dominic took out the plans for the lanterns and fireplaces and passed them to the mage. Those are the core of our abilities right now. We simplified them to the point that a short training class was enough to make new workers productive. They still need magical talent, but we have an academy now and soon to be a second one, as the mage tower is still setting up. Once that is finished, we will have teachers for everything from mages to techno-wizards to healers and garden witches.
Oh.
It is good that you have diversified, even if it's at two separate locations. Too many academics don't think beyond their own specialty. Ironically, I was called here because the king thought that you needed a proper techno-wizard skilled in theory on your staff. He could not find any outstanding credentials for the sex that you have here. Dominic nodded. They have a master techno-wizard, but he's a bit of an odd one. Skilled, but eccentric. Still, good enough teachers that they can turn out skilled apprentices. It will be good to have you here. I am always in need of more techno-wizardry. The devices make everything better, and we're incorporating them into all aspects of life here. Things are a little different in Westover. Our magic is mostly with the commoners, not the titled nobles. The lads of the Natural Sons Regiment make up most of our peerage, and while they're skilled enough with using magic, not many of them are theorists. The old mage laughed. I know. I taught most of them when they were in the academy as children. Some of their fathers, too. Jack reminded him. Possibly their grandfathers. Jenna agreed. Did I volunteer to be bullied? If we're going on about age, don't forget that you lot aren't immune to criticism. Alistair complained. Jenna smiled back at him. I have no clue what you mean. I am a young woman compared to you.